Good evening. My name is Margery Gans, and I am a member of the board of the Writers' Room of Boston. I'm delighted that you could join us this evening for our June interview in our virtual series, Writers' Room After Hours. The series began in 2023. For anyone new to us, the Writers' Room of Boston is a co-working space in downtown Boston for any and all writers, whether you're established or just starting, who want or need a quiet place to write. The room is open 24 hours a day, and it provides desks and silence and the quiet companionship of other writers. The Writers' Room has been serving writers of the greater Boston area since 1993. During and since the pandemic, the room has been offering online resources, including this interview series, a monthly Readings from the Room series, and an online writing group with prompts and discussions. We also have been holding open houses so that people can come into the room, see what's there, and meet other writers. This interview series began in 2023 when we decided to expand the time we get to talk more in depth with individual writers and with people associated with books and the arts. In person, oh, I'm sorry, I said that already. If you would like to know more about the room or have any questions, contact us. You can check out Facebook, Instagram at Writers of Boston, and the website has photos, announcements, and that's where you can find recordings of past readings from the room. This reading will be recorded and will probably be available in a couple of weeks. We would love to have new members, and we have different levels of membership. There's a virtual membership, there's a membership for the weekends, and no one is turned away for financial reasons. We really make the effort to make the room affordable for people who want to come here. So if you're interested, check out the website, writersroomofboston.org. This series is made possible by grants from the Mass Cultural Council and Boston Cultural Council. We also rely on friends. So if you enjoy this program, please consider making a contribution using the donate button on the website. And this, as I said, will be recorded and will be available in a couple of weeks on the website. Tonight, I am speaking with Mable Chan, and Mable is Hong Kong born, a first generation immigrant. She has a master's degree in regional studies in East Asia from Harvard and a bachelor's degree in broadcast journalism and management from the S.I. Newhouse School of Public Communications at Syracuse University. She's the founder and executive producer at One in a Billion Productions, a nonprofit media company that she launched in 2017. One in a Billion's mission is to build a global community through personal storytelling by empowering Asian voices in films and podcasts. Mabel's first love is journalism. She joined the New York Times in 2021 as a freelance reporter for the Metro and National desks. She also serves on the board of the Asian American Journalists Association New England chapter. Mable has been a broadcast network news producer for Good Morning America, ABC News, Dateline NBC, and CBS News. She is a recipient of top journalism awards, including the George Foster Peabody, Alfred I. DuPont Columbia Silver Baton, and the Edward R. Murrow Award for Best Investigative Reporting. She is passionate about mentoring the next generation of journalists and storytellers. What prompted this interview is partly that she's currently working on a memoir entitled Gone, which chronicles her life as it moved from Hong Kong to the United States by mapping significant turning points in those years. Mable is fluent in Cantonese, Mandarin, besides English. She is also a yogi and a classical piano player who performs regularly at the Boston Symphony Orchestra, actually at the cafe. She resides in New York City and Cambridge, Massachusetts. She has a wide range, obviously, of experience and interests. So welcome, Mable.
Thank you, Marjorie. Thank you
Yeah.
for that.
So as we talked earlier, I have a lot of questions for you we probably won't get through. And if there are people in the audience who have questions, we can leave room for that toward the end. So please put them in the Q&A if you have questions. I'll keep my eye on it. So first, let's talk about memoir writing, because you're both a memoirist and a journalist. And at some point, I'm going to ask you about both of those. But people write memoirs at different stages of their lives, and you're not very old. So what made you decide now to write a memoir?
Well, I'm actually quite old, maybe older than I look. I have lived a while.
Well, you've lived a
I
lot.
have lived a while. I think the now question is really tied to a very big loss, a
Mm,
sudden, unexpected loss of my father in 2021 in Hong Kong when he passed away during the height of COVID. And he was in Hong Kong, and I was here in Cambridge. I think that when he died so suddenly, it is very jolting. He was certainly a senior in his age. He was 91. Yet the distance that I had been living away from my father and my siblings and all the family in Hong Kong had always compounded this idea that I miss them, of course, and we could not always be together. And when my father passed away, it was a huge undertaking to go to Hong Kong. I won't go into the details about that, but it is the difficulties, right? All the obstacles in getting there, and I couldn't be there in person for the funeral. I had to deliver my eulogy in a quarantine hotel. I
mm,
couldn't get out for 2 weeks quarantine in Hong Kong, and I had to dig into my memory uh, conversations that I had with my father in Chinese. And those 2 weeks were sort of a memory boot camp, right? Really
mm,
digging into the words that he said to me, conversations we had every time I went back to Hong Kong after first coming to America. And all these years, I kept going back, conversations we had. And I had to distill from those conversations nuggets that I had held and carried, especially in moments of sort of life or death moments as a journalist. And so the eulogy took 2 weeks to write, and I watched Cantonese news in Hong Kong 24, almost 24/7,
right.
to help me refresh the lingo, how I talk to my father in a different language. And I think that really was the pretext for a year later when I came back to Cambridge. I wasn't going to do a memoir at all, but I was writing a treatment to want to write about other people's stories. You know how it is as journalists, you want to write about other people's stories. And I have a treatment for a plan for this book, and I showed it to two colleagues on my team at One in a Billion. And both said, Mabel, you should write your own memoir. Basically, the treatment is referring to how I could understand the people I want to write about. And the people I wanted to write about are the young generations who left home, left their families mostly in Hong Kong or elsewhere in China, different parts of China or Asia, and to pursue their dreams and all the obstacles in the family they left behind and in the new world that they've entered. And so, but then I had to talk a little bit about myself. And then my colleagues like, you should write your memoir. I'm like, what, really? And so I decided to dig it out again.
And for those of us who don't write screenplays, can you say what a treatment is, and in this particular situation, how it helped guide you?
Well, actually, this treatment was about a book and not a screenplay, although I do
Oh,
write a screenplay and have a first draft, and I'm also working on a TV pilot. But when I was referring to the treatment, I was laying out an introduction of basically why I'm writing a book about all these young people's dreams and some of the themes in their lives that I could resonate with, and how I hope to offer commentary, you know, on their stories. And of course, I would have to get these individuals that I picked. These are people I've interviewed on my podcast for
Uh-huh.
One in a Billion, right? And so I basically want to select individuals. So basically, I write out why I'm doing it, who I'm interviewing, and the purpose, right? Basically. So that's the treatment. And it's very internal, just to share with the team what I plan to do and get feedback.
So is that kind of the way that you came to articulate your own purpose in writing the memoir?
Uh, no, that's really separate.
Okay.
Writing one's memoir, writing my own memoir, I'm just going to share with people, once everyone should write their memoir, I think, because it's such a helpful process
Huh.
of directly, immediately, and intimately in words and gradually in depth over time, you get to understand yourself. In my case, how I came to do that is actually the process, right? Because this is the after hour. We talk about the process.
Yeah.
I actually started, I actually tried to start writing a memoir in my 40s when my mom died.
Uh-huh.
And again, it's a sudden death, heart attack. She was actually having dim sum lunch with her friends
Oh,
during the day, and she died of a heart attack at night. And she was in Hong Kong. I was at my first job in New York. There were a lot of unresolved issues between us that I always thought I had time to talk
yeah.
about. And I would initiate the conversation every time I go back to Hong Kong. I would find a way to talk with her. But then when she died, actually not in my 40s, what did I say? I 40s, actually in my 30s. Okay, a little bit younger, not that much younger, but 30s. When my mom died, uh, I actually started crying and praying to God that I lost my compass, because my mother was a driving force in a negative way for me.
Mm-hmm.
And my father is really the current central theme of this memoir, is the driving force in a positive way. And
Yeah.
so I need both. I need to prove my mom wrong, and I need to
Mm-hmm.
prove my dad right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I remember crying very, very, very much, because I felt as if I lost my best enemy, and that was hard to fight, and my career was in New York, working in TV news at the time. So I had that process going in, and I basically would write out the way I saw Hong Kong as a culture, as a society at the time when I was growing up, how I saw my family, what makes it hard for me. I saw the gender roles, the gender dynamics, the power struggle within a very big business family that I grew up in. And I had a hard time fitting in. I always wanted to, tell someone. And then when my mom died, it was like suddenly a floodgate open. It's as if what I wanted to one day be able to share with her, that I can't now, I'm going to put it in words so that I look at it, I understand how I came to be, but also as if I would be reading it to someone someday.
That I was wondering that it's sort of at two levels. I wanted to ask you who you see as the audience for this. And I was wondering, is there a way in which this is a letter to your father and your mother?
Hmm. Yes, I got asked the second question a lot, and I'll answer that first, because you're not the first. I have considered that as well, and it may be possible at some points. But right now, when I started writing the memoir, I was still writing as if I'm writing about my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like the way I plot it is still chunks of time. Teenager over here, there are a lot of emotional turning points, and then there's just a lot of things that happen in my life. There's a lot of twists and turns. So I started writing it that way. I think it's important to first get that out
Mm-hmm.
so that you have a clear chronology or timeline of the movement that your life takes, the direction that I have control over or not. Because, when you
Mhm.
decide to do something, suddenly happens, something happens, right? But you have a good sort of baseline or foundation. So I started doing that so that I always have that as a reference point.
Mhm.
And then I felt that, it's so time consuming, not just time consuming, it's so emotionally draining that I cried a lot. And so much so that I felt that, maybe I won't do it. It's so time consuming. I have other work to do. You mentioned that freelance for the New York Times, and work suddenly started getting very busy for them. And I also run a nonprofit that I support. We support documentary productions. And so I decided that, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe I shouldn't do it. So I put that aside, but then it keeps nagging at me. I
Mm.
started taking classes. The point is, I started taking classes about memoir writing. But not just that. I love to uh, to read, and I love to become a better writer. And so, in the pursuit of honing my craft as a writer, I really want to challenge myself to learn how to tell a story in the form of a memoir. So that motivates me to take classes. I took a basic memoir class, and I learned that a memoir, unless you're a celebrity, that I am not, and depending on the audience, which I'll answer your question, you really need to define the scope, right, of your memoir. And that's they helped me narrow it down to my father and me. So they would say either write a period, right, or an event, or a relationship, or a specific object, something, right? So there is a specific constraint, is what they say, right? Constraint. So I decided to frame it around my drive that is based on my father's dream and a lifetime of basically near death experiences that are associated with my drive as a person and my drive as
Mhm.
a journalist that is also fueled by his dream. His dream is really for me to let go of me to find my way in the world,
Mm.
find your way in the world, and never make me lose faith. You know what that means. Don't make me lose faith. And to me, it's not just not to embarrass him, but to bring him honor, to make him look good, in other words, right? And that's so important because I know all that it took for him to support me and for me to go, do my own thing. I'm the only
Mhm.
one who left my family to be in America, so I know I got to be alive. I got to survive. You know what I mean?
Well, and it sounds like more than survive. You gave me a few bits to read, and what you've just said now about your father, that there's this sense that it was more than surviving, that you were really kind of launched in a way, and in a way that he didn't let himself be launched.
Self be
Launched.
launched. Oh,
That
right, right,
you
right,
you
right.
describe him as sort of hanging back, really,
Oh, yes,
and
yes,
off you
yes, yes,
went.
yes, 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 yes. And that's one of the difficulties that I had, with him, and that is, the more I keep going, the more I feel, uh, you know, in a way, I have to be honest because that's what is required in a memoir that you show your vulnerability. The more that I thought I was some hot shit, tracing news and getting promoted, the
Uh-huh.
more I was, feeling embarrassed about my father for being so timid, that he
Uh-huh.
dare not go anywhere, or that he would willingly subject himself to a lot of things that he wouldn't speak up for, or he would keep quiet. It's just the direction temperamentally and spiritually, intellectually, emotionally that we're just farther and farther apart. So that's something that I will muse about, in my memoir. So I think the answer to the letter writing is that uh, the is because of the audience. And I want the memoir to be inspiring and thought provoking for the next generation. I'm very big on mentoring. And
Mm-hmm.
because of my work for my nonprofit, I'm surrounded by young people. Uh, During the first couple of years of my nonprofit, it was launched in 2017. Before that, I would say, a couple of years before that, almost 10 years ago, I found myself surrounded by mostly young people going to China, coming from China, wanting to know my story. And so I know the next generation I'm targeting are people who are I'm targeting, but hopefully not only them, but
Yeah.
they are mobile. They're mobile, they're millennials, they're Gen Z, that they're chasing their own dreams by leaving their families, and against their wishes. And that's all good. I think it's important that you have a vision, that you dare to go after it. That's very, very important. That's what the American dream is. You
Mm-hmm.
have the heart and will to come here. Or if you're American, you go somewhere else because you see your life going in a different direction, go after it. But then also know the price you're paying. Number one, the price you're paying, the longer you and farther you go away, because in my case, I have changed in ways that went opposite culturally, mentally, emotionally, uh, from my father and also from my
Mm-hmm.
mother, right? So I would become judgmental and view them with Western eyes, if you will, right? And so it's something that I wanted to raise the red flag for the next generation, um, those who grew up in Asia or who are Asian American. So the
Mm-hmm.
audience that you then a long about way a roundabout way of answering your question. I do think that my background and upbringing in Hong Kong and the business family and all that stuff, it may find greater resonance with Asian American, uh, even though it also has universal themes, because I want it to be broader than just father and daughter, but also looking at the meaning of success, the meaning of love, family, duty, um, and human dignity, right? All
Mm-hmm.
these universal topics. So I think that because of my background and career as a woman in media, it may also speak to women, as they want to climb uh, up the ladder, how they need to move around, how they need to navigate, to be a go-getter and be charming and go get and be charming, all those things, all those ways, and how those ways that you need to be and to become, how that might actually pull you farther and farther away from your family. It's just impossible to balance or even start a family. New York also, where I spent my first and only real career. My second act right now, I wouldn't call it a career. My second act right now is my gift back.
Uh-huh.
But the act one is extremely all consuming.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's partly what struck me, that on the one hand, you're definitely talking about what it's like to move from one culture to a different culture and how to how that means such a huge and obvious separation from your family, and that would speak to people who have done that. And yet I was also reading it, and you kind of alluded to this, that we all leave our families. I mean, maybe some people don't, but it seems to me in this day and age, even if all we do is move 100 miles away, it's as if the culture is moving so fast. Like, I'm aware that both my stepdaughter and her children, who were like 11 and 9, they live in a different world from the
Yes,
one I
yes.
grew up in. And they have to move in a different world, and we have that gap.
Hmm.
So you also talk about bigger themes. Do you want to identify any of those sort of bigger ones? You have somewhat, but
Right, right, right. As I alluded to earlier, so mother and daughter, excuse me, father and daughter, and because of that uh, mutual reinforcing, my dream is really a derivative of my father's dream. when I first started telling my father, oh, I wanted to go to America for college. That's it. I had no long-term plan. It's not as if I wanted to be in TV. Nobody planned that far. I was a foreign student, so I could only one step at a time. But then the my dream just to go to school in America, study TV, and my dream was actually go back to Hong Kong and then become a buyer. I love
Oh,
watching TV so much. Journalism was not even close, but then my life turned out differently in terms of the opportunities for internship. So, but I think that it was extremely short term and shallow. I was like 16-year-old, but what do you think? So
right.
I love watching American TV, so I go study and then I come back here, and buy all these American programs and put it on the Hong Kong TV, so I can watch it and everybody can watch it and everybody's happy, right? It's a really simple formula. But then things happen in my father's life, right? In Hong Kong's family, and I see how his dream is actually for me to do well and blah blah blah, and so I feel as if he's emboldening me
Mm,
to keep going for the next and the next. And he would say to me at a certain point when I was single, I only got married 10 years ago. I'm very old, but I only got 12 years ago. But, he would say to me when he saw my career going so well in New York, he would say to me, Mabel, you don't have to get married. You don't have to get married. You don't have to to have good guy friends. Now, in hindsight, I think I knew what he meant. He actually said it out loud. I didn't want you to become someone's nurse, like taking care of a guy, So, but he wants to continue to bask in my success, as a way to make himself look good because he has a lot of issues as well in his own business family that I was hoping that I could help him gain face. I don't know whether to translate, to
no,
make him look good,
yeah,
basically. But
that
there is
works.
a certain Cantonese words, to help him fight
Hmm.
back. If he's being bullied by people at work, they're all brothers, right, in the family business, that he
Yeah.
couldn't breathe. Help me get my breath back so I can
Hmm.
breathe. So it's very reinforcing for me to keep going. So the theme would be success. That the success is also a duty, as a daughter, to show my love and respect for what
Mm,
he's investing in me, right? So I would say the themes, mother daughter. Excuse me, I keep saying my mother. Maybe I will definitely write about my mother, even though he's another auto fiction, another conversation, another time. But my father, father daughter, but the duty as a daughter, responsibility, keeping my promise, bringing him honor, and the meaning of success, really, at the end, and the meaning of love. I would say that it's not until very, very late in his years, he was in his 80s. Every time when I went back to Hong Kong, he had uh, dementia, Alzheimer's at one time, but later on it changed to a different form of dementia as diagnosed in Hong Kong. I think he was struggling to show me a different way that I could live and not always be so go go go. Because he always said to me, "You're very responsible." This is all Cantonese Chinese conversation, but
hmm.
I knew what he meant when he said I was very responsible. He actually meant to say that you kept your promise to me. You make me look good. It's like you can relax now, or you can release that now. You know, uh, but I knew that it's too late. It's too late. It's like it doesn't leave me. That
Hmm.
go 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 doesn't leave me, especially being a journalist, which I
Hmm.
know is what some of one of your questions. But I think that is the meaning of love is to continue to uh, show him that I can deliver my promise, but not just for the empty meaning of just delivering a promise is that the love is to make him feel good as well. That his belief in me is not wasted. Is not wasted, because there's a lot of pain, living away from your family and him living away from me for so long. He never talked about it. If he missed me, he never told me he missed me, or vice versa. So I would say those are the key themes.
I mean, it clearly means so much to you, and it's still very emotional. When you started, you mentioned taking classes that help. I I can't imagine writing a memoir. So some of this is me projecting out to the audience, but I think for some of us, writing a memoir would just be so daunting because you just, there's so, even if you're 25, there's so much there. How the themes are clearly come through as you talk about it. Did you have trouble picking and choosing what you were going to say?
I definitely had problems, I would say, as of 2 months ago. So for the longest time, all these years that I've lived until most recently taking a class, would help me organize my story, right? It's one thing Michael Lewis said. Is it Michael Lewis? Yeah, I think so. There's a story. No, it's actually Margaret Atwood. Let
Oh,
me give the correct attribution. Margaret Atwood. There's a story, there's the way you organize your story, right? So I definitely have a hard time picking and choosing what themes. But I think that because I've been writing for so long, since my 30s, and I would advise anyone anytime to start writing by dialing into the memory of themes and dialogues. I'm a very audio-visual person. I've only been in TV for so long. I actually
mhm,
was addicted to TV, and that's what drove me to come to America. You
mhm,
cannot study television production and programming in Hong Kong way back then. But
mhm.
anyway, so I'm a very sensitive, precocious child. I was a very sensitive, precocious child. So words and scenes stay with me. So
Yeah.
I would start with all those scenes. Those scenes are very important, uh, I would say, tools. They're tools to help you unlock the mystery of why are they important to you. And you cannot intellectualize it. You just have to start writing those scenes, and then it'll come to you. It's magic. It's very magical.
When you said earlier, everyone should write a memoir, I can make up what you might have meant, but why? Why do you think everyone should write a memoir?
You know, everyone should write a memoir in the way that makes sense for them to remember their lives.
Uh-huh.
One day, some of us will not be here. Actually, one day, all of us
All
won't
of
be
us
here.
won't.
It's just different day, different day. So to make sense of your life, it is important to first write it for yourself. That's why when I first wrote it in my 30s, I wrote it for myself. But being a journalist, I also pretend that when I'm writing this, I'm telling somebody else, like reporting on myself.
Right.
Um, when you write about your life at that first attempt, it helps you hold on to and let go of uh,
Mm,
issues that have been eating at you. It helps you get it out of your body, out of your mind, onto paper, words, your computer screen. And when you need to finish a sentence, when you need to finish a thought, then you start just one paragraph, one sentence, one paragraph, one page at a time. Slowly and slowly, when you're reading it and rereading it, you become an editor because you would want it to make sense to yourself. So it's really about making sense of your life. If you uh, want to live a life without thinking about it, then don't write a memoir. but, but if you want to think about your choices in life.
mhm,
Why did you choose to become X and not Y? Why did you decide to go this way or not that? I think that we will grow so much from that exercise of self discovery, and we can pass it on to other people so
mhm,
that, your lessons can help them,
mhm.
find their own way.
And so, as you describe it, it sounds like it's very organic. I mean, you have a structure in your head, but it sounds like as you're writing, you're so, I mean, I imagine really writing a memoir would be just emotional for anybody. I mean, so now I go to the other question. What different parts of yourself do you use being a journalist versus writing a memoir?
Okay, this is a great question. I'll answer the journalist first because we've been
Yeah.
talking about memoir for a while. A journalist is really an observer. The kind of journalism that I've been doing is an observer and an eyewitness. So there are two kinds. An eyewitness to, I did a lot of breaking news stories, a
Hmm.
lot of breaking news stories. I still do breaking news stories for the New York Times in Boston. I was on the Pope death watch, for weeks. You know how he was rumored or reportedly in dangerous zone, and
Well,
so I was
and
on the death watch team.
well, and you gave me that piece. You did 9/11.
And the 9/11, right? It
Talk
was one of
about,
the biggest. That was
yeah.
right. So breaking news. And so as an eyewitness, you're describing everything objectively, facts. And here's what happened, here's what happened, this is what people say. So you're collecting information, you're collecting data, and you're trying to cohere, make sense of the story. So that's one form, the most basic, and that's the breaking news stories. And I also do investigative stories. And so it's still a lot of data gathering, processing, and trying to. You have a thesis going in. You have an assumption that X has done Y, and it's not okay, or it's fishy, or it's
Hmm.
shadowy, right? It's That's why you're investigating, right? Because it is somewhat of interest to the
Interesting.
public if they're voting for this person or if they are giving money to this nonprofit and then there's some wrongdoing or some appearance of wrongdoing,
Hmm.
right? Anyways, so the investigative part, you are very rational, you're detached, and you're neutral. You don't make personal judgment, but you let the facts that you gather speak for itself, and you let the interpretation be coming from experts who've been following this issue. For example, campaign finance fraud, right?
Yeah.
Campaign finance fraud, right? A lot of he says, she says a lot of data, because you have to report it to the government. So there's a lot of data. But then sometimes you have to interpret the meaning. We cannot be interpreting the meaning. And so we find people talkers to do it. Memoir, I've just learned these two roles that I'm playing, which is so helpful. When I'm writing, I'm narrating. I'm the narrator. When you're writing fiction, you're a narrator, right?
Hmm.
I'm narrating, but I'm narrating my story, and my story as the I is the protagonist.
Right.
So I learned. Uh, I actually, for some reason, I did not have trouble being I have trouble being the narrator when I was writing in my 30s. It's just I like just like reporting, right? This is the way I see it. That's it. There's no pullback. There's
Hmm.
no pullback. It's just the way I see it, self-absorbed, self-possessed, self-indulgent, and more self dot dot dot. Right?
But you
Just
can't
that's
reflect on it. You can't.
correct. I was very young. Yes, I was very young. And it happened, when I lost my mom. And I think I wrote it 6 months later, and I wrote 20 chapters, and then I was until I was, in my 40s, and then I got busy and I did something else, right? so,
Hmm.
so, but now at this stage of my life, I lost both parents, right? And I'm much older. And I am also at a stage, because of my nonprofit, I am much uh, more obsessed, if you will. It means a lot more to me that I'm able to mentor other people. So I want the narrator voice to have more pullback that I can muse. They call it musing. How do you muse in the scene? If you're
Hmm.
writing about what you were doing, as the protagonist, let's say as a protagonist in my 30s, I was falling in love madly with this playboy. I know he's not going to be loyal, but but I love the way he looks, the way he smells, the way he walks, and you would have all these romances, blah blah blah, right? So you're writing as a protagonist. Right? That's how
Hmm.
I was back then. But then, as a narrator, you can muse about it. by saying, for example, it would take me years to learn not to fall for Playboy.
Yeah.
So that kind of a
Yeah.
pullback. So, and I learned to do more musing because I'm older.
Mhm.
I have more things to muse about,
Yeah, definitely,
right?
definitely. And you can make more connections, as you look at the whole
Yes.
thing, you step back, you get close, you step back, you get close. Yeah. It was interesting you gave me what you gave me to read about 9/11. Is that part of the memoir? I
That's actually
assume.
the opening.
Because it seemed as if, and I know other people haven't read it, but what I was struck by was the ability that you had to describe what was happening right down by where the towers were, and also your own personal response when you talk about, oh, if this happens, I'll be a hero. That kind of conversation with your father. And it seems to me in that piece, you did actually this beautiful job of bringing your journalistic self and your memoir self. Is that something you were conscious of, or do I
When
make
I'm
any sense?
writing that chapter, or
Well, that was the only one I had to read,
right, right, right.
but
Okay, so I just
and
want to make
because it
sure.
was 9/11, which,
Right.
we all, not everybody, but, so many of
I
us
was
lived through.
somewhat conscious of it. First of all, it is a fact that I really consider just not getting up when I was pushed. I was in a stampede. I was down, spread eagle, right, for a couple of minutes, and actually felt good because I could catch my breath. When you're running away from a falling tower, you catch your breath and lying on your belly. I could actually breathe a little, and so even a couple of minutes, all these thoughts are already jamming my head, you
Yeah,
know, and I consider not getting up. I consider the heroic death, and it's just very random, all kinds of thoughts with my dad, and then they would know, and then they would be very proud of me that I died a heroic death, or Dateline NBC would think that, oh my God, Mabel died, and all these things would come to you. It's very interesting how when you're facing death and surrounded by death, a falling tower, finally that is a tower. I did not even know it was a tower falling because it was hidden, covered in thick black smoke. So you
right,
do not see a building. You see, the plume of
right.
smoke and dust, going down. It's the people screaming. It's the building. Then, it's like,
Yeah,
um, so it's big enough to die, and it's okay if I die. That sort of thing. It's very funny, the psychology. Well, you're a psychologist, so maybe when you face death in that way, all kinds of voices would come out as if your demons
hmm,
are coming out to dare you. Are you gonna die now, or are you not gonna die? It's very interesting, looking back, but all that did happen. So I was uh conscious of it at the time, but
hmm.
I was less conscious of it when I was writing that chapter, like full. You never know how the full chapter is going to be. As writer, it just unfolds, right? But the mother's voice came in about you couldn't even run away. Was really it didn't happen as I was down. It didn't happen, but it happened when I was writing because
I
I
see.
wanted to find a way to explain the energy of running. And that is true, that is emotionally true of my drive, is that I can run away.
Hmm.
I can run away from you, mom. You know, does it
Yeah,
make sense? So I don't
yeah.
know whether I answered your question.
Well, it sounds from what you're saying, so correct it, is that straight journalism you would have described as best you could what you saw, which was you couldn't see the towers. I mean,
Right.
I'm from New York, so I was like heart in my mouth,
Yeah.
but I was in Boston. And so I
Yeah.
was just watching on TV, and I remember that it was just smoke
Yes,
everywhere.
yes,
You
yes,
had
yes, yes.
no idea. So you would have described what you could and your own experience of falling and people running by. And then it was sort of your memoir self that went back and said, oh, that's my mother's voice driving that particular part of my experience.
Yes,
And
yes, yes, exactly. That's right. That's exactly right. Very well put. When I'm writing the memoir now, then I'm trying to cohere the themes, my drive, my father's dream. My mother played an earlier role in that, and my dad played a much larger role, and immediate role in sparking uh, this memoir and sustaining my drive. My father really was the sustainer of my drive. My father outlived my mother by 25 years,
wow.
you know.
So when you say, I'm still on the question of everyone should write a memoir
Yeah,
because,
yeah, yeah.
again, I'm so resistant to it. I'm trying to open my mind. Have you learned things about yourself that you didn't know before?
This is a great question. I'm always discovering things about myself that I didn't know before when I have new facts. And that is when I'm writing about my runaway episode, for example, when I was very, very young. I didn't know that I would remember so much. I didn't know that my mother's words that were very stinging to me. Sometimes I didn't know until I wrote the memoir that I'm I'm now talking like her sometimes.
Ah,
I don't know if you have read about this, and that is, you know, either the older we get or the more we miss our parents, or somebody, the more we take on their voice. Have you heard that before? And I
I've
didn't
heard,
know that.
yeah, I've heard it about age and I've heard it about taking on a role, like becoming a mother,
Right, right,
becoming a
right, right, right,
father. And I don't
right.
have children, but I can imagine sort of, oh my God, I sound just like my mother, that kind of thing.
But you see, the thing is, I resented how my mother sounded. You see, that's why it surprises me that I didn't know
Yes.
that I missed her at that level because I
Mhm.
am my mother's daughter. And so, as I'm writing my memoir, I have to recall those tones, the tone that she would say certain things
Yep.
in different scenes and different dialogues. And in writing, so suddenly they become my voice in certain situations.
Yes. You
Not my
totally
everyday
get it.
tone.
Yep. Yep.
And then therefore that is surprising to me because I thought I wanted to try to sound good. I'm only in TV, so I need to sound good.
Hmm.
And that's also part of the training, in
Right.
television, that you need to be clear, right, when you speak. But then, and then I would resent my mom when she wasn't clear, or my dad. And so it's just my pet peeves. But I think what I learned most about myself is that I would, as much as I said that I wish I could talk more with my father and my mother about the way things were between us, our relationship, I am just like them. I didn't want to talk about it either, right? Until now.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's the denial that I now am going to not deny it.
In part because
I'm going.
you had to face it to write it. Is that right?
Yes, yes, yes. I have to face it, and I am ready to face it.
Yeah.
It's like if I don't face it now, when am I going to face it? And then
Hmm.
also in so doing, I also think that it might help the next generation for intergenerational communication. And that is intergenerational, intercultural, communication. That's exactly what I hope, and that drives home the point that you don't know when you're going to be gone. You don't know when they're
Right.
going to be gone.
Right.
So what needs to be said should be said.
I mean, I felt this both reading what you gave me to read, but as we're talking, it in some ways it's so obvious, but as a friend of mine once said, never underestimate the obvious. You know, we all have parents, and I know that my vision is skewed because I'm a therapist, and people come in and they talk about their parents.
Yes.
And yet I think for almost all of us, making some kind of peace with our parents. Sometimes it's more obvious, the peace that we feel, maybe we feel guilty about how we were a kid, or maybe we're still angry with them, or maybe we're just grieving the loss of them. But
Yes.
it's, as you're sort of saying, this is a relationship that lasts all our lives. We are carrying our parents in us, whether we like it or
Yes.
not. We may be
Yes.
proud of it, or we may go, "Oh God, I can't believe I just did that." But in some ways, that also runs through your memoir, both as an inspiration to other people to write a memoir, and also for anybody who reads it, whether they come from Idaho or Brazil or Hong Kong or
Yes. Yes.
Boston, because
Yes.
we all had parents
Yes.
somewhere back there. So I think that's just really important.
Yes, I do think you're exactly right. It's for reconciliation, for peace, for healing. You know, there are relationships that are broken that we either did so intentionally, subconsciously, unconsciously. Yet, when you're writing the memoir, you know you have to really open yourself. Like, if I open my body now, this is what's going on inside.
Right.
Otherwise, there's no point in writing it, painting a good image of myself. I don't need that at this stage in my life. I
Hmm.
think what I mean to say when I say that is I do not want my writing to be sort of whitewashed,
Yeah.
to look good, to make anyone look good is not genuine. I have to face my own demons at critical points in my life when I decided what I decided, so that I can have the maturity, um, so that I can share the maturity of my growth. And then hopefully people will become mature earlier, and not uh, miss the opportunity to communicate and to bond with their loved ones and to heal relationships that need to be healed.
The other thing that you clearly had to be have available to you was the courage to do this. I mean, you haven't used that word, but as we talk, and when I asked earlier, like, how do you know when, how did you choose? It seems like somewhere inside you, you have to say, I'm ready for this. I have the courage to go forward. And if you're going to continue writing and you discover the difficulties and the emotions, that you have to say, I'm going to go on with this. I'm going to continue with this. And you've been able to do that.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Marjorie. Thank you very much for saying it. But you say it because you can say it. I never said that to myself. I never said I'm ready. I keep crying those tears because I think that I need to go through that in order to really plumb the depth of my feelings about what I have decided to do in life, regardless of how different my choices are
Mm-hmm.
from what my parents may have chosen. What I choose to become, that is a very different vision than what
Yeah.
they have for me. I feel as if I just need to cry it all out and
Mm-hmm.
then learn how to harvest, the sorrow, the tears, and to be able to hone the craft and the description of what that is like.
Yeah.
Not the crying, but what that's like post crying and coming through it. What it reveals
Mm-hmm.
is always about what it reveals about me, about my parents, in this case, my father, and most importantly, that I refused to face before.
Yeah.
you know and if I didn't cry about it, then it probably did not mean as much. And so it's very self-perpetuating,
Mm-hmm.
perpetuating an exercise. You throw yourself in there, you
Yep.
know to write about stuff that would trigger a lot more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The emotions come out, but it's only when they come out that not only does it feel good physically, but then there's the magic happens when those tears come out and your body release it, then
Yes,
suddenly there's light that you see something that you may cry even more because the
yes,
light melts you. The
yeah,
light will melt you.
yeah,
But it's a very profound experience that I encourage people to think about trying.
I we we thought we might, you and I thought we might come to a pause earlier, but we haven't. So
Oh,
I'm sorry.
no
But
worries,
so
no
we
worries.
should be winding up, and I just have a few closing, but I wanted to ask, is there anything that I haven't asked, anything that you want to say that I haven't?
I think you covered it really well, Marjorie. You are a very natural, spontaneous interviewer, and we have really good chemistry talking. I think it kudos to you, as a
Yeah,
psychiatrist, a
my job.
therapist.
And I love it. I mean, I really love hearing people talk about their lives and their work. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you very, very, very much. And I'm going to just switch now and go into sort of farewell mode. And that's what I'm doing. So basically, what I just want to say is thank you. Thank you so much. I think we went places that I wasn't sure we would, and I'm glad we did. But your thoughts on memoir and on journalism and the way, and sometimes they might work together. And thank you to everyone who joined us. Special thanks always to Leslie Ostro, who is the Writers Room Program Director, and our wonderful technology maven for her help this evening. As I said, this program will be recorded and it will be available on the website in a couple of weeks. So, wrapping this up, I would say join us. We will have another interview, maybe in the summer, it may be postponed till fall. We're not sure, but you would know that from the website, the Facebook, or Instagram. And so we will post notices for sure. And in the meantime, again in the fall, there will be more readings from the room. And during the summer, there are online writing groups. In the fall, again, there will be an open house where people can actually come physically, take a look at the room, meet other writers. It's a lovely evening. And all those announcements will be available, Instagram, the website, Facebook, and we would love to have you join us. So for now, good night, everyone, and thank you, readers, listeners, and have a wonderful rest of the evening. And thank you, Mabel, and thank you, Leslie.
Thank you, Marjorie. Thank you,
Yes,
Leslie.
good night.
Good night.